Well, as President Trump pushed for a border wall tonight, Border Patrol agents are on high alert. A new migrant caravan has just arrived at the Texas border. About 2,000 migrants have reached Piedras Negras, just across from Eagle Pass. That's where Eyewitness News reporter Jaleesa Irizarry joins us tonight.
The sun is setting on day one of the Border Patrol's response to the caravan, and what we've seen is an increase in law enforcement. We're actually just a few feet away from the Mexican border. This is the Rio Grande right here. Border Patrol officers were out here all day today on boat patrolling the area, and the bridge right behind me that connects Mexico to the U.S. border. Officers were out there as well, preparing for anything. Officers in riot gear spent the afternoon on the bridge that connects Mexico and the U.S. performing drills. A caravan of 2,000 migrants arrived in the bordering Mexican town of Piedras Negras on Monday. The migrants are expected to seek political asylum in the United States through Eagle Pass, a border town that often only sees about a couple dozen asylum seekers a day.
So if we're looking at 1,800 people that are seeking political asylum, we're talking about 6 months of work.
A lot of time and technology that Mayor Ramsey English Cantu says they don't have. Cantu says it's not a wall that they need here in Eagle Pass, it's funding to get better technology for their port of entries.
There has been, drugs or illegals that have crossed through the ports of entry. This is not a situation where we're seeing mass invasion of the daily people that are crossing on the riverbanks on into U.S. soil.
We don't know if, when, or how the caravan will attempt to make its way to the U.S. border, but Customs, Border Patrol, and DPS state troopers are preparing for anything. Reporting in Eagle Pass, I'm Jaleesa Irizarry.